You sit down to plan your future, and you believe you are building something. But what you are really doing is trying to control your fear of what might happen. If you do not, that distinction matters more than you think. Because the moment you confuse planning with control, you stop building a life and start constructing a defense. And the vision you create will not be yours. It will belong to the part of you that is terrified of being exposed as unprepared, inadequate, or lost. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He saw that when the ego inflates itself by identifying with an idealized future, it disconnects from the deeper layers of the psyche. It begins to believe it can manage every outcome, anticipate every threat, eliminate every flaw. But the psyche does not work that way. And when you try to force it to, you do not gain clarity. You gain rigidity. Most people approach vision boards and life planning as if they are assembling a catalog of desires. They cut images from magazines or scroll through curated feeds, selecting symbols that represent success, beauty, achievement, belonging. They arrange these images carefully. They call it manifestation. They call it intention. But what they rarely do is ask themselves what they are refusing to include. That refusal is where the real psychological work begins, because the vision you avoid reveals more about your inner landscape than the vision you display. If your board is filled with images of control, perfection, and external validation, the shadow is not absent, it is simply unacknowledged. And what remains unacknowledged does not disappear. It waits, it builds pressure, and eventually it sabotages the very future you are trying to construct. Jung called this projection. When you look at your vision board, you are not looking at the future. You are looking at a screen onto which you have cast your conscious desires and your unconscious fears. The image of the perfect body is not just about health. It is about the fear of being seen as weak or undisciplined. The image of the corner office is not just about ambition. It is about the fear of being invisible or insignificant. The image of the peaceful relationship is not just about love. It is about the fear of being abandoned or misunderstood. Every image carries a double meaning. One meaning lives in the light of your awareness. The other lives in the shadow of what you cannot yet face. And if you do not bring the shadow into the process, your vision will be incomplete. It will be a performance of who you think you should become, not an integration of who you actually are. There is a deeper problem here. When you create a vision based entirely on conscious ideals, you activate what Jung called ego inflation. The ego begins to overestimate its capacity. It starts to believe it can engineer the self into a state of flawless execution. It identifies with a future image so completely that it forgets the image is just a symbol, not the totality of your being. This is why so many people feel hollow even when they achieve their goals. They climb the mountain they visualized, only to discover that the mountain was constructed from borrowed desires, cultural scripts, and unexamined fears. The version of themselves they built was never rooted in the self. The deeper organizing center of the psyche that Jung described as the goal of indiv, I-do-ah. It was rooted in the persona, the mask they wear to meet the expectations of others. And the persona, no matter how polished, cannot provide meaning. It can only provide approval. And approval is not the same as wholeness. So what does it mean to create a vision from a place of psychological integrity? It means you stop pretending you are a blank canvas. You are not. You arrive at this process carrying wounds, patterns, fears, desires, an unconscious material that has been shaping your choices long before you ever sat down with a vision board. The question is not what do you want to become? The question is what are you already becoming beneath your awareness? And does that trajectory reflect your true nature, or does it reflect your conditioning? Jung believed that the unconscious is not a repository of dysfunction. It is a source of guidance. It holds information that the conscious mind cannot access because the conscious mind is too narrow. It's focused on survival and social performance. The unconscious sees the larger pattern. It knows what you need even when you do not. And it communicates through dreams, through slips of the tongue, through sudden emotions that seem to come from nowhere, and through the images that arise unbidden when you sit in silence. This is why the vision you construct must include dissent, not just assent. If your vision for the future is only about achievement, expansion, and external success, you are ignoring half of the psychological equation. Jung emphasized that. Individuation requires a journey into the underworld of the psyche, into the parts of yourself you have disowned, repressed, or judged. You cannot become whole by stacking accomplishments. You become whole by integrating what you have refused to see. That means acknowledging the fear beneath the ambition, the loneliness beneath the productivity, the anger beneath the compliance, the grief beneath the optimism. When you bring these elements into your vision, something shifts. Your future stops being a fantasy and starts being a lived reality, 'cause it is grounded in the truth of who you are, not the illusion of who you wish to appear to be. People resist this process because it feels destabilizing. They want certainty. They want control. They want to believe that if they plan meticulously enough, they can eliminate risk and guarantee success. But control is a function of the ego, and the ego is not equipped to lead the individuation process. It is too reactive. It is too concerned with image. It is too afraid of the unknown. The self, on the other hand, is not afraid. The self is the organizing principle that holds both the light and the shadow, both the conscious and the unconscious, both the achieved and the unrealized. When you create a vision from the self, you are not trying to impose order on chaos. You are listening to the order that is already present beneath the noise of your anxious thinking. This is where the concept of architectural precision becomes psychologically meaningful. You are not building a fantasy. You are constructing a container that can hold transformation. And transformation is not linear. It does not move in a straight line from vision to achievement. It moves in cycles. It moves through periods of clarity and confusion, expansion and contraction, confidence and doubt. If your vision is too rigid, it will break the first time reality deviates from your plan. But if your vision is grounded in psychological truth, it will bend. It will adapt. It will remain coherent even when the circumstances change, because it is not dependent on external outcomes. It is rooted in internal alignment, so when you sit down to construct your vision for the year ahead, start with a different question. Not what do I want, but what is trying to emerge through me. Not what will make me successful, but what will make me whole. Not what will impress others, but what will honor the self. These questions move you out of the ego's domain and into the territory of the conscious. And that is where the real work happens. You cannot plan your way into individuation. You cannot manifest your way into integration. You can only create the conditions under which those processes can unfold. And those conditions require honesty, humility, and a willingness to include what you have been avoiding. Now consider the psychological phenomenon that occurs when you begin to operate from this place. Other people react. They become uncomfortable. They project their own fears onto your process. If you are no longer performing certainty, if you are no longer pretending to have it all figured out, they interpret that as weakness. They tell you that you need a clearer plan. They tell you that vision boards are supposed to be inspiring, not complicated. They tell you that you are overthinking it. What they are really saying is that your willingness to confront the shadow makes them aware of their own avoidance. You become a mirror. And most people do not want to see what the mirror reveals. They would rather you stay in the realm of surface-level ambition, because that is a game they understand. It is a game they can win. But the moment you shift the game to one of psychological depth, they lose their footing. And their discomfort is not your responsibility. Jung spoke extensively about the projection mechanism. When someone judges your process, they are often revealing their own unintegrated material. The person who tells you that planning the future should be exciting and optimistic is likely someone who has never allowed themselves to grieve the future they lost. The person who insists that you need more discipline and structure is likely someone who uses control as a defense against their own chaos. The person who dismisses your introspection as self-indulgent is likely someone who is terrified of what they might find if they looked inward. You are not responsible for managing their projections. You are only responsible for recognizing them for what they are. And when you do, something powerful happens. You stop defending your process. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to convince others that your approach is valid. You simply continue. And that silence, that refusal to justify, is itself a form of psychological strength. Silence in this context is not passivity. It is sovereignty. It is the refusal to allow external voices to colonize your inner authority. When you stop broadcasting your plans, when you stop performing your transformation, you reclaim the energy that was being drained by the need for validation. You redirect that energy back into the process itself, and the process deepens. Jung understood that individuation is not a public event. It is an inward journey that occasionally manifests outward results. But the results are not the point. The integration is the point. And integration cannot happen under the pressure of external scrutiny. It requires privacy. It requires space. It requires the kind of silence that allows the unconscious to speak without being drowned out by the noise of other people's expectations. This is why discipline, in the Jungian sense, is not about forcing yourself to follow a plan. It is about maintaining the integrity of your relationship with the unconscious. It is about showing up to the process even when it is uncomfortable, even when it does not produce immediate results, even when the people around you do not understand. It is about trusting that the psyche knows what it is doing even when the ego does not. And that trust is not blind faith. It is earned through repeated engagement with the inner material. It is earned through honoring the dreams, the intuitions, the sudden insights that arise when you are not trying to control the outcome. It is earned through the willingness to revise your vision when the unconscious reveals something you had not considered. So your vision board, if it is to be psychologically meaningful, must be a living document. It cannot be something you create once and then force yourself to match. It must evolve as you evolve. It must reflect the ongoing dialogue between your conscious intentions and your unconscious needs. And that dialogue is not always comfortable. Sometimes the unconscious will present you with an image that contradicts everything you thought you wanted. Sometimes it will show you a path that feels dangerous, uncertain, or socially unacceptable. And in those moments, you have a choice. You can dismiss the image because it does not fit your conscious plan. Or you can pause, sit with the discomfort, and ask what the unconscious is trying to communicate. If you choose the latter, you enter the territory of real transformation. Because transformation is not about becoming a better version of the self you already are. It is about becoming more fully who you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning, trauma, and social performance. There's a reason why Jung placed so much emphasis on the concept of the self as distinct from the ego. The ego is the conscious sense of identity. It is the narrator of your story. It is the part of you that says, I am this, I want that, I will do this. The self, on the other hand, is the totality. It includes the ego, but it also includes the shadow, the anima or animus, the personal and collective unconscious. The self is not something you construct. It is something you uncover. And the process of uncovering it is what Jung called individuation. When you create a vision for your future from the ego alone, you are working with a fragment. But when you create a vision in dialogue with the self, you are working with the whole. And the whole has access to resources, insights, and possibilities that the ego cannot imagine. This is not mysticism. This is practical psychology. The unconscious contains patterns, memories, and potentials that have been accumulating over your entire lifetime. Some of this material is personal. Some of it is archetypal, rooted in the collective human experience. When you create space for this material to inform your vision, you are not abandoning logic or reason. You are expanding your toolkit. You are allowing the deeper intelligence of the psyche to participate in the planning process. And that intelligence is far more sophisticated than any vision board you could construct with your conscious mind alone. Because the conscious mind is limited by its own blind spots. It cannot see what it has repressed. It cannot acknowledge what it has denied. But the unconscious sees all of it. And if you learn to listen, it will guide you toward a future that is not just successful, but aligned. Alignment is the key word here. Success without alignment is hollow. You can achieve every goal on your list and still feel empty if those goals were not rooted in your true nature. Jung saw this constantly in his clinical practice. People came to him in the middle of their lives, having accomplished everything society told them to accomplish, and yet they were drowning in despair. They had the career, the family, the status, the wealth, but they had no sense of meaning, because they had built a life based on external expectations rather than internal truth. And no amount of achievement can compensate for that fundamental disconnection. This is why the vision you create must be interrogated. You must ask yourself, is this mine or is this borrowed? Is this what I truly want, or is this what I think will make me safe, acceptable, or admired? And if the answer is the latter, you must go deeper. You must find the desire beneath the desire. You must find the fear beneath the ambition. And you must integrate both into your vision, because both are real. And both deserve acknowledgement. When you do this work, something remarkable happens. Your vision becomes more focused, not less. It becomes more specific, not more vague, because you are no longer trying to please everyone. You are no longer hedging your bets. You are no longer constructing a version of the future that will protect you from judgment or rejection. You are building from the center of your being. And the center is unshakable. It does not need to perform. It does not need to prove. It simply exists, and from that existence, it generates action that is coherent, purposeful, and aligned with the deepest truth of who you are. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of the self as the organizing principle. When you operate from the self, your life organizes itself around that center. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but with a sense of direction that is unmistakable. And here is the paradox. The more you release the need to control the future, the more effective your planning becomes. Because you are no longer fighting against the unconscious. You are working with it. You are allowing it to reveal what needs to be included, what needs to be released, and what needs to be transformed. And that collaboration produces a vision that is both grounded and expansive, both practical and profound. It is a vision that can hold failure without collapsing. It is a vision that can adapt to unexpected circumstances without losing its core integrity. It is a vision that honors the complexity of your inner life while still providing a clear direction for your outer actions. So as you sit down to create your vision for the year ahead, do not rush. Do not force. Do not perform. Sit in silence first. Allow the unconscious to present itself. Pay attention to the images that arise, especially the ones that make you uncomfortable. Those are the images that carry the most information. Ask yourself what you have been avoiding. Ask yourself what part of your future you are afraid to include because it does not match the story you want to tell. Ask yourself what you are defending against and whether that defense is still necessary. And then, slowly, begin to construct a vision that includes all of it. The ambition and the fear. The hope and the grief. The expansion and the contraction. The light and the shadow. Because that is what a whole life looks like. It is not a straight line toward success. It is a spiral that moves through cycles of growth and integration, always deepening. Always becoming more fully itself. This is not the vision they will teach you to create. It is not optimized for social media. It is not designed to inspire applause. It is quiet. It is private. It is messy in the way that real transformation is always messy. But it is yours. And in a world that constantly demands you perform a version of yourself that is palatable, acceptable, and easy to understand, the act of building a vision from your own depths is an act of quiet rebellion. It is a reclaiming of your inner authority. It is a refusal to let the external world dictate the shape of your becoming. And that refusal, that sovereignty, is the foundation upon which a meaningful life is built. Not a perfect life, not a life without struggle or doubt, but a life that is coherent, aligned, and rooted in the truth of who you are beneath all the masks you have learned to wear.